Earlier this season, I did a power list, and some Bangalore fans were upset that I didn't put them as high as I might have. And to be fair, most fans are generally upset when you do a power list that their team isn't as high as they would like it to be. But in this particular case, it was because I said that I think when you're looking at Bangalore, you have to factor in the entire history of the franchise at a certain point. Yes, they got off to a brilliant start, but we need to see a lot more from them than that to be able to trust them. I think by the end of the season, they suggested that even with their torturous, disgusting history, they weren't actually that far away from being a really good team and a potential championship contender.
This is the last knock. My dad refuses to tell me what this means.
And that in itself is a victory. This is a perennially terrible team. They're sub 500 for the whole time, which when you consider the market that they're in, some of the players that they've had, the money that they've had, there's been some weird stuff as well. You know, the first owner was dodgy, and that whole period where they like test players, and Kohli probably hasn't always been the best at actually assembling a team around him. Dan Vittoria was there for a very long time without that ever working. A lot of things have gone against them, but at the same time, they should at least have won 50% of their games. This is historically awful. And this year they were good, but it was on the back of a couple of incredible years. Harshal Patel was historically good. Before this, he was barely a replacement level player who hadn't played a full season since 2015. And then, the equal most wickets ever in the season of this league. And it wasn't just him, was it? Glenn Maxwell also had a career year. In fact, it's probably not even Glenn Maxwell's best year in this league, but it was an incredible year. And considering he's had so many low years, you have to give him that. I mean, when you hire Maxwell, you're in this sort of perennial panic. You've spent all this money and you don't know if you're going to get someone averaging 17 or someone with a strike rate of 170 who completely lights the league on fire. They got that one. And Maxwell took a really good top 4 and made it an incredible top 5. Of course, not all their bets paid off. They hired Kyle Jamieson largely because he's a really good test bowler. He was successful in T20 cricket in New Zealand. It's a big step up to go from that league to this league without anything in between, even if you are 19 foot tall. They took a punt on Dan Christian, which made sense. They needed that sort of experience. And Dan Trophy has won more trophies than there actually are functioning T20 leagues at this stage. So you can understand why they did that. But again, those 2 punts didn't come off. But perhaps the most disappointing thing was just Kohli himself. It was just a down season for him. He just never got going by his own standards. His average was average for a normal player, but well below for him, and his strike rate wasn't that good. You could probably allow him to be one or the other. Combination of both wasn't ideal. Barrett and Padikkal both looked very good at certain times, but none of them scored at a really rapid rate. It'd be interesting to see if they can get their rates up in future seasons. And to be fair to Padikkal, at one stage, it did look like he was going to end up with a good strike rate, but he really struggled in the second half. De Villiers was extraordinary before the break, and after break not so much, but he played 3 just incredible innings in this, and I did see some whispers from people say that, he may be past. I don't think he's anywhere near past it. I just think he struggled after the break, which is more than normal. A lot of batters did, in fact. And also with their batting, they did have a lot of depth. Jamieson and Harshal Patel had some good innings with the bats when they needed it. And even though they actually had a couple of players like Christian and Washington Sundar be surprisingly bad, it didn't really affect their overall batting, I didn't think. I mean, essentially, this was a really quality batting lineup, but you put Maxwell into that and he had the ability to turn that radioactive. In the bowling, Mohammad Siraj basically had an unhittable season. I don't think we've actually talked about this enough. He was phenomenal from beginning to end, going at less than 7 runs and over. It actually makes retaining him really weird because last year he took wickets but was quite expensive. This year he didn't take as many wickets but wasn't hit. Before that, he wasn't a great T20 bowler. What exactly is Mohammad Siraj at the moment? And Bangalore are going to have to work that out because, mega auction. Do you build around him? Do you move on? My guess is that you probably back the fact that he's had 2 good seasons, even if he hasn't patched all of it together at the same time. Chahal had another great year. In fact, he's now had 5+ years in this league. He is a banker and a huge one for Bangalore. I mean, so much so that it kind of feels that anytime anything goes wrong, Virat Kohli just throws in the ball. Like Virat Kohli believes his wickets are worth double. And it was an incredible season from him. And if you think about it, that means that out of Harshal, Siraj and Chahal, they had 3 really top-level performances from local bowlers this season. And if you add AB de Villiers and Glenn Maxwell, they had 2 brilliant batting performances from overseas players. The real trouble comes from the other players. The local batters never quite turned up and the overseas bowlers just didn't do the job. But even with that, they had power in their batting and they had depth. And with their bowling, outside of a left armer, they had versatility and they usually had enough bowling for each game. When it comes down to it, they were probably just one star player, maybe Virat Kohli, maybe Kyle Jamieson, away from being a top 2 team. If one of those players had a better season, they were probably a very good chance of ending up in the top 2. And we probably don't talk about this enough. We talk about finals, but basically, the way this league is currently set up, it is a top 2 league. And I think the most disappointing thing, if you're a Bangalore fan, is going to be the fact that they had a chance to be in the top 2. When Chennai started gearing back, Bangalore won 4 of their last 5 games, and they were coming home with some incredible heat. But they won 4 of their last 5 games, and the game that they lost was against Hyderabad. Yeah. Hyderabad won 3 games, and one of them was the one that cost Bangalore their chance to finish in the top 2. And it was like Hyderabad on the last day of term vibes. It wasn't, Hyderabad trying to prove anyone wrong. It was disappointing. I mean, disappointing is not the right word. It was torturous. Googlies, quarter seamer, Karen, Dukes, back of the hand, red, leg cutters, Tisra, pink, knuckle, white, slider, seed, heavy, bounces, cherry, length, pill, off cutters, old, crimson traveller, kookaburra, hard, outswing, second new, off spin, arm, SG, split finger, shiny, leg spin, soft, new, Yorkers, flippers, wrong ends, long hops, reverse swing, half volley, and third new. These are just some of the names we use for balls in cricket. Well, Manscaped wants you to be as proud of your balls as you are of the ones delivered by your favourite cricketer. Manscaped just launched their 4th generation trimmer, the Lawnmower 4.0. Join over 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer, 20% off and free worldwide shipping. Insert the code REDINKA at manscaped.com. I've actually used this, not just something that I'm hawking for fun, and I got to admit, I thought it was a bit silly, and then I went down there, and it was exceptional. I honestly feel I could bowl outswing with one nut and inswing with the other. So get 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code REDINKA at manscaped.com. Manscaped, for the man who cares about his balls as much as the ones out in the middle. And when you look at this Bangalore season, it's probably just a little bit messier than you remember. I mean, they beat Delhi twice, but they did lose to Chennai twice, and in 3 games against Kolkata, they lost 2 of those. And I had a look at the coin toss games, the games that come down to the last couple of balls or the very close ones. They were 3-1 during the season in those, meaning they could have easily been 2-2 in those games and just slipped back a little bit closer. Meaning they could have easily been 2-2 in those games and they could have slipped back a little bit then and just been an above average team. I think in this particular case, the points table probably has it right. They were the 3rd best performing team this year. Not quite top 2, but, close. And the problem is that when you aren't top 2, you just don't have a parachute. The loss to Kolkata is another close loss. They could have won that as well. But if you think about this from a Bangalore fan perspective, that's 2 years in a row in the finals, above 500 overall. And this was a high quality season, even if they were one and done. But it's also the end of an era, not just because it's the end of the mega auction, but because King Kohli is no longer going to be in charge. And they have decisions to make over players like AB de Villiers, who is, essentially a Bangalore legend, but also Glenn Maxwell, Mohammad Siraj, and even players like Washington Sundar. The last time they came to a mega auction, they parted ways with KL Rahul, and it did not work well for them. They have to get this mega auction right, because there's nothing that really tells us that within their setup that they're absolute geniuses and backroom staff is going to make things better. If they don't get the mega auction right, they can maybe, after a couple of years, slowly improve their team again. But I just don't think the people who own and run the franchise are clued up enough to get the mega auction wrong and still go on to be a very good team afterwards. And this all feels very Bangalore, doesn't it? They are on the cusp of getting their shit together. This was a big winning season. They just missed out on the 2nd spot, lost a close knockout game, and after all that, they had the mega auction. I suppose though at this point, if you're a Bangalore fan, this just feels like any other day that ends with a Y.